This is a story about predatory paedophile priests and the damage they cause.
It did start when I was very young, 9 or 10, but it did continue for the best part of a decade.
Victims who've been left fighting for truth and justice.
There was no one that I could turn to. I felt there was no one I could turn, no one that would believe me.
And abject failings within the Anglican Church which have left children vulnerable to sexual abuse.
We are deeply and profoundly sorry for what happened. Really ashamed on behalf of the church community.
And this is where the story begins, Eastbourne. As a child, Phil Johnson was groomed, then seriously sexually abused by a priest. It started when he was a 9-year-old choir boy and church server. His abuser, Father Roy Cotton, was at the time a revered, trusted Anglican priest, but it was a deceptive veneer. Cotton was a prolific serial paedophile with a frightening ability to silence his victims.
It was, prolonged, went on for years and years, and was regular, systematic, became completely routine in the, most horrible sort of way you can imagine.
So how did this happen? Cotton was manipulative and highly intelligent. He was ordained in spite of having a previous conviction for abusing a choir boy. It was a green light for a paedophile to become a respected community priest, an opportunity for him to satisfy his lust for boys. And this set the scene for a culture of abuse by Anglican priests and other like-minded individuals that pervaded this seaside town in the 70s, 80s and 90s.
He managed to put himself in a position where nobody questioned his motives. As it turns out, there are so many victims now who've come forward. I find it almost incomprehensible how he managed to do this.
At least 12 men abused as boys have now revealed they were targeted and abused by Cotton.
I was scared. I was very scared, and I wanted to run away. I suppose there was a big part of me that wanted to run away, but I felt trapped.
Many, like Simon, were lured then sexually assaulted inside the vicarage.
It's had an enormous impact on my life. I had quite a difficult childhood. I've self-harmed over the years, or in my younger years, I should say. It's something you just don't get out of your mind. It's a bit like losing somebody. It may soften over time, but it never, ever, ever goes away.
Convicted of abusing boys in 2008, this priest, Reverend Colin Pritchard, knew exactly what Cotton was up to. The pair, who had been friends for years, had swapped victims. Cotton also regularly took boys on his own to France, where he visited a Catholic priest who took indecent photographs of the children.
I can't believe that, firstly, it was allowed to happen, but that nobody seemed to question it. It just shouldn't be allowed for anybody, really, to take, unrelated children away, one on one, to share hotel rooms.
The man in charge, the area bishop at the time, was Bishop Peter Ball. Later, in 1993, he was forced to resign in disgrace after accepting a police caution for gross indecency against a 17-year-old trainee monk.
You have the vicar, who clearly was an abuser and had a previous conviction. You had his best friend, who has subsequently been convicted of abusing boys. You have a bishop who, accepted a police caution for acts of abuse, and you have other associates.
We've discovered Cotton took teenage boys to see Bishop Peter Ball in the 1980s. Bishop Peter put young men, some in their teens, who had stayed with him at his residential retreat in Little Inton, under the care of Cotton in Eastbourne. But Bishop Peter Ball denies there was any collusion. In a statement, he told us he saw as much of Roy Cotton as he did any other priest. He says he certainly did not know of any abuse. He told us the police had inspected his files at Lambeth Palace but had not found any legal offence. In an interview conducted last year, the Bishop of Chichester, the Right Reverend John Hind, declined to comment on Peter Ball.
Do you believe Bishop Peter Ball turned a blind eye to what was going on?
I don't think I'm willing to talk about somebody from the past like that. I think it would be quite inappropriate for me to go into that.
Adding to Phil's torment was the shattering discovery that his younger brother had also been targeted by Cotton. An angelic-looking choir boy, Gary Johnson kept the abuse he had endured a closely guarded secret.
I just directly asked him a question and asked him if anything had happened to him with Roy Cotton.
How did you respond to that?
I just froze. I can remember not moving and not breathing and not doing anything. I didn't even look round. We were actually sort of adjacent to each other, and so my back was to him when he spoke to me, and I didn't turn around or anything. I just froze, and obviously he knew what that meant. And I couldn't tell you how long that lasted. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or an hour or what, but it just, from that point on, I was kind of like I was rumbled. You know, this had been my deepest, darkest secret. I'd never breathed it to anybody, and at that point my whole life had to change.
I just felt completely responsible. I felt as though, you know, I could have prevented this from happening to him and hadn't done so.
Together, Phil and Gary sought justice, but 2 years after going to the police, the Crown Prosecution Service said there weren't enough independent witnesses.
Obviously, I felt immensely let down and depressed and thought that was the end of it. I thought all that effort and grief and heartache had been for nothing.
Despite this major setback, 15 years later, the brothers chose to fight for justice through the civil courts. To gain compensation from the church, both were repeatedly evaluated by psychiatrists who assess the damage caused by the abuse, a process that often re-traumatises victims. During this assessment back in 2010, Phil accompanied his younger brother to give him moral support.
How'd it go? Horrible. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to go somewhere, get a drink or something before we?
Yeah, what time are we going to be at the other place?
2:30, we got time. We've got an hour.
Okay.
All right. All right, we'll talk about it in a minute. I don't know. Let's just go that way. We've got to go head in that direction, so let's just go that way. All right, come on.
Phil and Gary eventually received a compensation payout from the church. More importantly, they say, the settlement included a formal apology, accepting mistakes that led to their abuse.
Being abused is bad enough. Being abused by someone in such a position of authority means that I don't trust doctors, I don't trust the police, I don't trust anyone in a position of authority. I don't trust men. Can you imagine going through life not trusting all those categories of people?
The sexual abuse in this case, which spans 60 years, is extensive and disturbing. But just if not more worrying are the failings within the Church of England and the growing suspicions of a cover-up. Roy Cotton's career file spanning 27 years, likely to have contained details implicating church hierarchy, appears to have simply vanished, as if it never existed. We've learnt that elsewhere in Sussex, one senior member of clergy is suspected to have instructed the burning of potentially incriminating files. Following our investigations, the Archbishop of Canterbury has for the first time in over 100 years launched an inquiry into the safeguarding practices in the Diocese of Chichester. The Bishop of Chichester, who retires in 2 months' time, has welcomed the investigation.
I think there's been an instinct, which I think is quite a good Christian instinct, to think the best of people until you know the worst. I think in safeguarding terms, that's actually a very dangerous policy. And I think one of the things we've learnt is that anybody may be an abuser.
I think the failings have been profound and devastating to a lot of people. I don't think that the bishops and the senior clergy understand at all just how big the impact this has on people's lives.
Cheating his many victims of justice, Roy Cotton died in 2006. His ashes are marked by a headstone in St George's Church graveyard in the village of Brede, the parish he went to after Eastbourne. Locals requested it be removed. Church officials recently planted a £9 holly bush in front of it in an attempt to cover it up.
It's been such a long slog, such an uphill battle. You know, I don't understand why a body that's supposed to represent everything that's just and true and right can't just, you know, put their hands up and be open and honest and share the truth with people, however embarrassing that might be for them.
Tragically, Cotton's story is not an isolated one, merely representative of a culture of negligence, which leaves many unanswered questions which we'll be pursuing in the months to come.